Okay. So in the last session we discussed about the different data types in Apex. We also talked about classes and methods, right? Today we are going to start creating custom controller using Apex. All right. So this is where we are going to write the program. So as I told you in the last session, we're going to create a class. We're going to write the functionalities that we need on the page in the class. And then we are going to call this class as a controller on the Visual Force page. That's what we are going to do. All right. Okay, so before we start creating a class, I would want you to understand, a little more about the methods in Salesforce. All right. So as I told you, methods are basically the piece of code which carry the instruction, which have the instructions, what needs to be done. Okay. Now there can be two types of methods: void methods and non-void methods. Okay. What's a void method? A void method is a method which does not return any value. A non-void method is a method which returns a value. Right. So remember yesterday we were writing a method for add, and then we were writing a method for multiply. Now that add method basically performs the calculation and returns us the value result. Right. So some methods will return a value at the end of it. Some methods will not return any value. They will just perform the action and that's it. Okay. So we do not expect any return value from them. So the ones which do not return anything are void methods. The ones which return some value are called non-void methods. Okay. So whether a method is void or non-void, that has to be defined in the first line of the method itself. Where you are defining the method, there itself we'll have to define whether it's a void or non-void method. Let's say there is a method which is going to return integer. So you'll have to define that method as public integer. Method name can be m1 or whatever. Okay. Now this means that this method is going to return an integer. Okay. So end of this method we have to have a return statement which returns an integer. Okay. Got it. If this method does not return anything, if there's a method which does not return anything, then you should write public void m2. Okay. So for a method we have to either write a void method if it's a void method which does not return anything, or we have to write the data type of the value that it is gonna return. All right. Now this is a void method. This should not have a return statement because it's not gonna return anything. Got it? So this is one thing. Second thing is for visual force methods. Now so this is basically a general understanding about a method. Either a method is going to return something or it's not going to return anything. So if it does not return anything, just make it a void method. That's one thing. Now talking about visual force methods. Okay. Now for visual force, there are three types of methods that we are going to work with for visual force. Let's say this is the visual force page, and this is the controller class. This is where the code is written. All right. Now we are gonna, as I told you, we are gonna call the class and then we are gonna call the method on the visual force page. Now there can be three types of methods. There will be methods which are being used for bringing data from the class to the page. Okay. Some methods will be used to display data from the class to the page. Okay. There will be methods which will be used for taking the values from the page and pass it on to the class. Okay, so this is more like an output, this is more input kind of a thing. Okay, the method which is used for displaying data from the code to the page is called a getter method. The method which is used for taking the value from the page and supply it to the code is called a setter method. Okay, so we have got getter method. Getter method is basically used for taking the data from the code and display to the page. Then we have got setter method. Setter method is used for taking the data from the page and pass it on to the code. Okay, and then we have action methods. Action method can be everything else apart from output input. Any other method, let's say there's a method which has to save a record, there's a method which has to move from one page to other page. Anything else can be put in an action method. Displaying the data will be done using getter method. Taking inputs will be done using setter method. Everything else will be done using action methods. Alright, so that's what we are gonna work with. So these are the three different types of methods that we are gonna work in Visualforce. We will use getter method today. Today we are gonna start working with getter method. I'll talk about setter method and action method in the next sessions. Alright. Okay, so let's get started. So we'll start with a small example. We will display a hello message on Visualforce page. Okay, so I just want to display a custom hello message on the Visualforce page. So if I want to display a message on the Visualforce page, which method do you think I need? Getter, setter, or action? Which method will be required? I have to display a hello message on the Visualforce page. Which method do you think we require? Getter method is required, right? Yes. So we're going to use the getter method. Okay. So we are going to create the page here. Sorry, before the page we have to create the class also. Okay, so we are going to create the custom controller class. To create a class, you just need to go to setup, develop, and then you say Apex classes. Okay, this is where you're going to create the class. I told you we have to create the class. Inside the class we're going to create the method. So just go to setup, develop, Apex classes, click on new, and this is where you are going to start creating your class. Okay, so you start writing the class. You have to define it as a public class because we are going to call it as a custom controller. Okay, any custom controller will be always defined as a public class. Okay, now so you say public class, name of the class can be anything, C1, and this is my class. Now the code needs to be written inside this. Okay, so that's my class called C1. My requirement is to display a hello message. Hello message is going to be a string, right? So let me define a string here. String message equals hello, how are you? Right? Now I cannot directly call this variable. This is just a variable, right? So I cannot call this variable on the Visualforce page. So what do I need to do? I need to define a method that returns this value, right? That returns the value of this string. So I have to go ahead and define the method for that. This method also has to be public method because I want to call it on the Visual Force page. What will be the return type? String. This method is a non-void method. It has to return a value, right? When I call this method on the Visual Force page, it should return the value of this particular variable, right? So this is also a non-void method. Public string. Getter methods are non-void always because they have to return some value on the Visual Force page, right? Okay. Now name of the method will start with the keyword get, and then you can write anything. Let's call it get message or whatever. Okay. This get keyword has to be there. This actually helps Salesforce understand that this is a getter method. That's it. What do I want this method to do? I just want this method to return message. That's it. So when I call this method, it's only gonna return the value of this. That's it. Save it. Done. Okay. My job is done. Now let's go to the Visual Force page. Create a new Visual Force page. Okay. Here's the Visual Force page. This time we are gonna call the custom controller here, which means we are gonna call the class that we defined as a controller. Let me delete all this. So this time you don't need to define a standard controller. You just say controller equals name of the class C1. That's the name of the class, right? Okay. Save it. Now once you have called the class as a controller here, you should be able to call the methods in this page. While you are calling the method name, you don't have to call the get part of it. You can just call the method name excluding the get part. So which means this much I can call. To call a method name, it's a simple syntax within curly brackets starting with exclamation mark, method name, click on save. That's it. You see this? This is how simple it is to bring a value from the code to the Visual Force page. Okay, just define a get method and bring the data. Okay. Let me define an S object. Account A equals new account name equals ABCD industry equals education. Okay. So now I've defined one more variable, which is an S object. Let's say I want to display this on the Visual Force page. Then what do I need? I need a get method for that, getter method, right? So public, what will be the return type here? I need to define a getter method which should return this S object account A. So what should be the return type here? This time it should be account, right? Because this time it's going to return an account. So public account get A what will it do? It will return value of A. That's it. Right. Now if I call this method on the visual force page, I should be able to return the value of this record A. Okay. So because it's an S object, you can call the field value by A dot name. See this? See, ABCD is the name of the record. So I'm saying A dot name. I can call A dot industry as well. A dot industry. Right. So this is how you can basically call the values on your visual force page. So whatever value you have to call, first of all, get it in a variable in the custom controller code, and then we just need a getter method just to make sure that we are able to display it on the visual force page. That's it. That's all we have to do. All right. Okay. Now let's do another example. Let's display a list of records on the visual force page. So I'll create a custom controller, and I'll use that to display a list of records on the visual force page. Pretty similar to what we did earlier, but this time we're gonna write our own query to get the list of records. So let me just go ahead and create another controller. Public class C2. Okay. Now let's say I want to display a list of records, account records. So I define that here, list of account equals. Okay. Now Salesforce allows us to write queries to fetch data from the database. All right, and this is called SOQL. SOQL stands for Salesforce Object Query Language. Okay, so this is basically the language which is used for querying the data from the database. You can write a select statement to fetch data from the database. Right. So let's say I want to write a query to fetch all the records from the account object. So you always have the option of writing a query for that. You can write select name type industry from account. All right. So now this variable ACTS holds name type industry from all the accounts. Right. That's what we have here. Is a list of records. Now I want to display this list on the visual force page. What do I need? I need a getter method for this. So if I need a getter method for this, let's define this. Now what is going to be the return type for a getter method which is going to return the value of this list variable? What will be the return type? Account or list of account? List of account. Okay, this is not a single account. Data type is different, right? For a single account record and for list of account, data type is different. This time data type is list of account. Okay, so this method returns list of account. It's a get method. That's it. Okay. So this ACTS is the list of records which includes name, type, industry from all the accounts, and I've defined a getter method to return the value of this list on the Visual Force page. Save it. Okay. Now let me go to the Visual Force page, create a new page. Define a controller C2. Okay. So the controller we have called. Now what we have to do, we have to understand that we are trying to display a list. For displaying a list of records, we need, a certain markup, right? To display a list of record, we need a certain sort of markup. So that's something which we'll have to look after in Visual Force page. But what markup is required, or what component is required? Which component you think will be fine to display a list of records? Which component we can use? If it's a list of record, I cannot just display the list of record like this. I need a certain component. Which component do you think we need for displaying list of records? Table component will be good, right? Okay, so that's it. So let's call the table component here. Apex page block. Title. Apex page block table. Okay. Here in the value you will call the method. Okay. Where can be anything. Okay. If you compare this to the table that we used for standard list controller, in that standard list controller option, this value was coming from record set where, right? Record set where was the variable which I told you holds the list of records. Here there is no record set where, it is coming from the method, getter method. Okay, so getter method will be called in the value attribute, and where is just a where. You can define whatever you want here, and then let's create the columns. Text column value a dot name type industry. Save this. Okay, it throws an error. Can anyone read this error and tell me what exactly it means? Why error? What is the problem with this code? So we are trying to display the phone field without querying it in the data in the class. All right. See, so either you have to query it or you should not try to display it on the Visual Force page. That is it. All right. So let me remove it. Save it. Now it should be fine. All right. So now I am able to display list of records on the Visual Force page. Okay, list of account records on the Visual Force page. Now, because you are the one who are writing the query, you are the one who is controlling the query. You can write whatever criteria you want. Let's say I just want to see all the account records where industry equals energy. Save. Now I've changed the query there. So the data that we get to see in the Visual Force page is also going to change. See, it only shows me the records where industry is energy, right? So this way, because you're writing the code, you will have a complete control on what data you want to display, how you want to control it, what condition, what criteria, everything you can control. Correct? Which was not the case with a standard controller. In a standard controller, I had to work with the entire list. Here, it's not the case. Here, you're writing the query, you write what condition or criteria you want to write, which data you want to display. You just define variables for that, define the getter methods, and call them on the Visual Force page. So now you have, kind of complete control over the code. Right. Okay. Now, um, there's another example which we're going to do. I want to display two different tables of data on the Visual Force page. Okay. Okay. So we are going to create a Visual Force page where we are going to display two different tables. One is channel accounts. One is direct accounts. Okay. Channel is where the type is channel, customer channel. Direct is where the type is customer direct. All right. So I want to display these two tables, and the user should be able to switch between the tables. So you should be able to see a particular type of account records. Okay. So we are gonna do this with the help of tabs. Okay. I'm gonna create two tabs. One tab is gonna display channel records, and the other tab is gonna display the direct records. So first of all, let me just go ahead and create a class. Set up Apex classes. Public class C3. Okay. I need two different list of records to be displayed, right? So I'll define two variables. One is list of account channel accounts. Select name, type, industry from account where type equals customer channel. All right. And I'm going to define one more list of account direct accounts. Similar query, just that the last condition is going to be slightly different. Sorry. Just customers. Okay, now we are gonna write two getter methods for these two variables. Okay, so this should return list of accounts, get channel accounts, return channel accounts, then there should be another method for returning the direct accounts. Right. Okay. So I've got two different variables, and I have got two getter methods for them. I'll save this. Now on the Visual Force page, we are going to create two tables in two different tabs. All right. One tab will have the channel accounts, the other tab will have the direct accounts. Okay. So now it's just a matter of how we want to call it on the Visual Force page. So page number 13. Controller, what's the name of the controller? C3, right? C3 is the controller. Page block title. Tab list, whatever name you want. Okay, now I need tabs, so for that I need to use a tab panel first. Inside the tab panel, I'm going to create the tabs. Apex tab, label channel accounts, label width can be 350 pixels, and I need another tab for direct accounts. Apex tab, label direct accounts, label width can be 350 again, right? So I've got two tabs now here. Under the first tab, I'm going to create a table which will call the direct accounts and which will call the channel accounts. Second tab, I'm going to create the create a table which is going to call the direct accounts. Got it? So that's what we need. Now let me just go ahead and create the tables. Page block table, here it is, value. Rest everything is pretty much similar to what we did in the last example. It's column, value a dot name. Fine. So this is one table. Another table needs to be created inside this tab, page block table. Apex page block table value channel direct accounts, right? Value a dot name type industry. Okay. Yep, that's what we have. So first tab has got channel accounts. It shows me only records where the type is customer channel, because I'm calling a method here in the first tab. The method that is being called is channel accounts. Okay, what does this return? This channel account method returns this variable called channel accounts, and that's the condition that I've written here. Select name type industry from account where type equals customer channel. So only the records where type is customer channel are being displayed here. Alright, now when you click on direct accounts, you will see only the records where type is customer direct. Alright, so now you can see the channel accounts here, direct accounts here. Okay, alright. Now this example, we are going to do this example in a slightly different way in the session tomorrow. Now what we're doing, I'll just tell you what exactly we're going to do next with this example. See here what we have done, we need to, our requirement is to display one list at a time. Do we want to display, are we displaying both the tables simultaneously? No, we're just displaying one at a time. Alright. So in this kind of a requirement, we could have managed with one page block table component, because I just want to display one at a time, right? But what we have done, we have created two page block table components, which is in a way making your page a little heavy. Got it? So you have defined two variables, two getter methods, and then finally you have included two page block table components. Okay. Now this approach is fine, but it's not a very efficient approach. Now we just have two tables. Think about it, if I have 5 tables like this, then including 5, and I just want to show one at a time to the end user. So in that case, I can manage with one table instead of having 5 tables, or in this case having 2 different table components. I could have managed it with one particular table component. That would have made my page a little lighter and reduce the lines of code as well. So that is the thing. All right. So for that, what we have to do to manage things with one table, we have to make the content in the table a little dynamic. So every time we click on a button or something, the content in the page in the table should change, right? So that's something which we are going to do in tomorrow's session. For that, we are going to use action method. All right. Okay. Now let me know if anyone has a question or doubt here, what we have discussed today. Any queries? Please let me know.